Welcome to the Screen the Screener College Basketball Podcast with your hosts, Mike Randle and Gus Kearns.
Welcome back into the Screen the Screener College Basketball Podcast, where we continue our march to previewing each and every one of the 357 Division I college basketball teams. I am your host, Mike Randle. Follow me on Twitter at RandleRand. Today, it is a special moment for me. One of my favorite teams from last year, one of the mid-major teams I am so high on, the Colorado State Rams. And to talk about Colorado State, look at last year and preview this year, we bring on Kevin Lytle from the Colorado State football and basketball coverage for the Coloradoan. You can follow him on Twitter at Kevin_Lytle, Lytle. He joins us for a few minutes here to talk about my beloved Colorado State Rams. Kevin, thanks so much for joining us. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you having me on. Looking forward to it.
So, Kevin, last year, I mean, just so much to talk about with Colorado State, and they were a team under Niko Medved that people maybe did not realize nationally were as good as they were. So I thought we'd just start, and I've asked everyone this question that we've had on: how did COVID affect the Rams early in the season, preseason, and as they went through the regular season? There were some big high moments, and they really finished strong. But early on, were there quarantines, were there issues, stoppages, and how did it affect Colorado State?
Yeah, early on, it was actually huge. You know, it was one of those sort of cruelly ironic things through, pretty much all of the summer workouts and everything. CSU had been clean, no positive tests. They'd been able to get through their workouts as much as anyone had, and things were going good. And kind of as the season, we were closing in on the start of the season, CSU announced a contract extension for Niko Medved. So kind of a big, exciting moment for the team and everything, or for the program. And then I think it was 2 days later, they got shut down by a COVID pause. Some positive cases basically ran through the team, as will happen with basketball. A bunch of them are roommates, everything. So once one got in, it was pretty much trouble. And it shut the team down for almost a month. They missed, I think it was their first, would have been 7 games. And it really, really messed things up, right as you're about to head into the season. And so by the time they got to their first game, I think they had 3 full team practices. And early in the year, they played St. Mary's in a super ugly game, lost 53-33. I think people that maybe hadn't been paying attention were going, oh, man, I thought this team was supposed to be good, but they looked terrible. The reality is I think they had 6 practices by that point, so it really affected them early on. But as you mentioned, they got things going. They were pretty much COVID clear the rest of the season, and really kind of that midseason were really rolling. Had a chance to win a conference title, ended up due to some curious decisions by Mountain West, had to play.
We'll get to it, Kevin. Ridiculous. Yep.
4 games in 7 days, ended up not being able to win all those. That probably cost them not only a Mountain West title, but pretty arguably, you could say, a bid into the NCAA tournament. So pretty, like everyone had a roller coaster season last year, but CSU especially, or definitely, was on that train as well.
Couple games I want to point out. The first one was the St. Mary's game. I remember watching that. I watched as much Colorado State out here in New Jersey as I could. It was a peculiar situation. It's a well-coached team by Randy Bennett. Colorado State had not had a bevy of practices. It was just a bad spot. But the one that I will point out and we can discuss is the legendary, the greatest comeback in Mountain West history. Full disclosure, Kevin, I went on a run. The game was 28-5. I went on a run. I was so frustrated. I'm listening on the run, and they start coming back. I refused to stop running until the game was over. I went on an hour and 40-minute distance run. My wife goes, "Where were you?" I said I couldn't stop. I had to keep running until they hit that 3. So talk there about that game. I mean, really was the point that I felt, see, this team is as good as I think it is, and it was just a legendary comeback.
Yeah, well, that's quite a workout for you. I mean,
I was exhausted.
When they were down 27, I think Medved would have been happy to leave and go on that run with you, because I think he was feeling about the same way. But yeah, that game, I mean, that's still one of those, pretty much how you described it, I think is great. It was one of those, just sitting there watching, it's like, what is going on? Because even with about 3 minutes left, I'm sitting there thinking, well, hey, they showed some gumption. They showed some of what they can really do, to get back in the game. I was like, obviously they're not going to come all the way back. And then, the crazy sequence of events, that kind of finishing with John Tonje hitting the three and getting fouled to give them the lead that they basically held on to. It was just insane. I mean, it's one of those, obviously it showed a whole lot of what they can do, a little bit of their belief. Obviously, it's a 1 in 100 game. If you go down 27 to San Diego State at Viejas, you're losing that at least 99 times out of 100, if not more. But it really did. And it because they had the season before, they had a couple kind of close calls, including at Viejas. So it gave, this young team like that kind of excitement, that energy of like, hey, we can actually win these games. And I think that really carried them through the rest of the season.
Yeah, they had just great performances. And I was sitting there when I'm running, I'm like, this team is too good. This isn't making sense. Great comeback when they split with San Diego State on the road. Then they split with Utah State on the road. Extremely respectable, coming back after losing the first game by 19 points. Split with Boise State at home. Also respectable. They beat Wyoming twice. They sweep Air Force. And they end with a close loss away at Nevada, which I thought, Kevin, was the game. I know they were on the first 4 out. They were one of those replacement teams. Everyone was talking about it as they headed into the Mountain West. But I'm like, man, if they win that game, even if they lose in that second round, I think they'll get in. But then they go into the Mountain West. They beat Fresno State easily by 10. And then the Utah State game, they battled, but just couldn't get through. After the Mountain West Conference, did you think they were in the tournament, or was the gut feeling around the team, I think we're going to fall short?
No, I think by that point, pretty much going into that Utah State game, all the national, look at things, all the bracketology and all that fun stuff, which obviously isn't, exact science, but you get a pretty good idea. Everyone agreed. I mean, even the coaches agreed that Utah State game was basically the play-in game for those two teams. Just the way their resumes were. Like you said, I think if CSU had that Nevada win in their back pocket, I think it's a different conversation. I think CSU could have lost and still made it. But with that loss to Nevada, pretty much whoever won the Utah State CSU Mountain West semifinal was going to be in, and whoever lost was pretty much guaranteed to be out. It was still close. I mean, after that, CSU sitting there watching all the results, and for a while things were going well. And then I think it was kind of late afternoon, Saturday of that, kind of conference championship weekend, one thing after another started turning against them. And I think by about 11 o'clock our time Saturday night, I think pretty much everyone was resigned to the fact that CSU was probably, 90% likely to be out. There was a little bit of hope watching the selection show for fans, but I think most by that point knew it was out. So yeah, that ended up being a play-in game against Utah State, and that Nevada game just still looms large. Obviously Utah State won, and Medved has said this. He said, hey, it was there. If we win, we're in. And we knew that, and we didn't take care of business. So they knew that, but man, you got to look at that Nevada game and say, man, that scheduling change, we'll call it, really hurt them.
And you touched on this before. There was this odd situation, and you can refresh my memory. I believe it was San Diego State was given 2 wins for games that were canceled against New Mexico. Do I have that right? Something like that, where it just was bizarre how they determined the conference champion.
Yep, so it's a very bizarre is the great word for it. So early in Mountain West play, San Diego State was supposed to play New Mexico, and word kind of started filtering through some of the journalists that covered those teams before that New Mexico wasn't going to play. But it wasn't that they didn't have enough players due to COVID. New Mexico went through a lot. They were, relocated because the state of New Mexico wouldn't allow them to play and practice at home. They had some injuries, some transfers and stuff, so they're pretty thin anyway. And basically it looked like they were considering opting out as a team and just ending their season. And so at that time of that San Diego State series, they basically chose not to play. And so at the time, it kind of didn't seem like much because everyone just assumed,
it's Kevin. It's like Jerry Seinfeld. I choose not to run. What does that even mean?
Exactly. Something we've never seen in college sports. I don't think, that type of situation. But at the time, you didn't really think it's a big deal. Everyone just assumes, well, San Diego State will have won 2 games, whatever. But then it comes down. New Mexico comes to CSU, and literally, I'm in the arena an hour before tip. I see all the powers that be meeting at midcourt, the athletic director, head coach, the trainer, and that's the one that always alarms you. When a trainer is talking to an athletic department in the middle of a pandemic right before a tip-off, you get worried. Sure enough, they called the game. New Mexico had basically a close contact. That whole story in itself is crazy, but we won't go there. So that series gets canceled. So now all of a sudden, both San Diego State and CSU haven't played New Mexico, and that's going to end up looking like it's a tiebreaker. But the Mountain West deemed the two games they didn't play against San Diego State as forfeits because, like I say, it wasn't a COVID situation. It was a we choose not to play situation. But then they made CSU make up one of the games against New Mexico, which of course CSU won, which was expected. But it was, like I say, part of 4 games in 7 days, and it was 2 days after playing New Mexico in Fort Collins. They had to play Nevada down in Reno, and Nevada, I believe, I'd have to refresh my memory, but I believe Nevada hadn't played in a week. So you have a tired CSU team traveling to a rested Nevada.
That's exactly right.
Grant Sherfield hits a shot at the end to beat CSU, and like we've said, it certainly didn't help CSU's cause making the tournament.
You nailed it across the board. Nevada had not played since Sunday, February 28th. The game was on Friday, March 5th. And Colorado State then had played on February 27th, Saturday, Monday, March 1st, Wednesday, March 3rd, and Friday, March 5th. And to your point, in that game at Nevada, not easy. They were winning that game going into the last few minutes. They got outscored in the last 10 minutes by 6 points. So Colorado State pulls ahead. Thistlewood fouled out in that game. I remember that. So Very, very frustrating. But regardless, it was a great season for Colorado State. And Kevin, if it's possible, it looks like this season's going to be even better because, correct me if I'm wrong, they got everybody back.
Yeah, this team is loaded. I believe it's their top 7 scorers return. Really, the only person not coming back is PJ Bird, kind of a reserve guard, who certainly did some nice things for them. But the bulk of the team, the scoring, the production, the everything, the leadership is all back. And yeah, they now have a ton of experience together. They went, last year, I think they were 313th in the experience rankings, and now it's going to be way up there, and especially in college basketball these days with transfers and everything. It's hard to keep your top, 7, 8 guys together, and they've done it. So yeah, this team is definitely pretty loaded. I know, Mike, I'll give you credit. A year ago when we talked, you were on top of this. You were probably the first person nationally to say, hey, watch out for this Colorado State team. We had seen it building here locally, but nationally, I don't think that had happened. And you called it, and now they're kind of a trendy mid-major pick. They're one of the several teams that, they're in a lot of the preseason top 25 and all that type of stuff. David Roddy and Isaiah Stevens are getting a lot of love. So yeah, you were right on it, and it's trending the way you thought it would, and the way that everyone here certainly expected and had been hoping for.
Yeah, I don't mind. I'm driving the bus. Kevin, you and I have been on there. People have to pay to jump on with us. But let's go player by player. David Roddy, first team All Mountain West. He's listed at 6'5". He's probably smaller than that. Just a tremendous force inside. He is basically, I think, a guard playing inside. He battles and guards the opposing bigs. He stays out of foul trouble, uses his body well, gets rebounds, which is really essential because if you're going to look for a weakness in Colorado State, it's going to be on the boards. But Roddy means so much to this team.
You have to start the conversation with Colorado State with David Roddy. He's, Medved calls him the most unique player he's ever coached. And it's probably not even close, honestly. It's pretty easy call there. He's a guy that you really can't, you can't list him. Is he a guard? Is he a forward? He's positionless. He's very weird. They'll play him at the 5. They can play him almost as a point forward if they want. They'll put him in any situation. He just does, he's very aggressive. He's good at getting to the rim. His 3-point shooting, his in percentage wasn't great. He ended at 28%, but most of the season, honestly, he was shooting in the about 34% from 3 which with everything else he does, if he's doing that, good luck guarding that guy. As you said, great rebounder. And honestly, he still can improve a lot. He's still, there's only 2 years in of being fully committed to basketball because in high school, he was a state champion in discus and shot put. and he was a quarterback with Division I offers, including CSU's rival, Wyoming. So he's a guy that, just an amazing athlete. And he's one, I think, if CSU has the season that, most of us think they will, I think he's going to become one of those sort of kind of cult hero guys, the mid-major guy that maybe, isn't all over ESPN or whatever, but college basketball junkies are just going to adore him, as CSU continues to step forward.
I mean, the guy is just a double-double machine. He ended the regular season 3 straight double-doubles, and these are not cheap either. 22 and 12, 12 and 14, 20 and 10. Then in the tournament, he had 12 and 10 in the loss to Utah State. Then he goes in the NIT, goes 16 and 11. So just a critical piece. And it's not all they have. I mean, Isaiah Stevens was second team All Mountain West last year, runs the show for the team. I mean, just so many players that they have. They have Kendall Moore, of course. Thistlewood was honorable mention. Just a dangerous group. Stevens was freshman of the year, I believe, as a freshman in the conference. But this team balanced across the board.
Yeah, I mean, Stevens is a guy that because of Roddy's emergence, you maybe hear less about him, but he's just a baller. He is what you want in a point guard, just smart, savvy. He's great at getting to the rim, a great shooter. He's one of those, again, he'll fit whatever the game needs. If he needs to just dish out a bunch of assists, he's happy to score 4 points and have 14 assists, that type of guy. And he really runs the show. And he's probably the, leader in the clubhouse, so to speak, in a lot of ways. And then Moore and Thistlewood, they're really the veterans. They were the first signees of Medved as he came to CSU. Kendall Moore is just a pain to play against. He's a little bulldog, good shooter. He actually dropped off a little bit in shooting last year, but I think he'll be really good. Great defensive guy. And Thistlewood's just kind of your knock him down shooter who has really improved his overall game. I think he came in as a just shooter, and now he can do a lot of things. And then, I think the depth, especially this year, I'm sure we'll get into their transfer additions, but their depth is going to be really, really good.
Yeah, well, let's get into those transfers now. And I guess the key would be the Division II All-American Chandler Jacobs. He came over 6'3", can do it all. Honestly, I'm going to project him to come off the bench probably, but that's going to give them a lot of strength coming off that bench. The guy is talented, like I said, Division II All-American, and the recruits coming in, I would think the transfers coming in, going to add to this team, make them even stronger. Yeah,
Chandler Jacobs is a huge get for CSU. He's a guy that early in the offseason, some of my sources had said, hey, watch out, CSU. They're really on him. They think they have a good chance. And obviously he liked them, but then he committed to Texas Tech. You go, oh man, like if CSU's fighting Texas Tech for transfers, that certainly means something. And then with some of the changes at Tech, that spot kind of disappeared on him, ended up back at CSU. And I'm very intrigued. The lineup question is fascinating. I do kind of feel the same way. He's probably come off the bench, but he's a guy that can really score it, can really defend as well. And he adds another element that they, I guess maybe they've had, but not in multiple pieces like they'll have now. So Chandler Jacobs, I think that's a huge get, 1-year guy for CSU, and I'm really excited to see how he fits in and can really help them, because I think that was a spot where every now and then, if Roddy and or Stevens were struggling, they had guys that could score certainly, but they were all very young. And so now just having an experienced guy like that is really going to be huge. And it's just going to be hard to figure out where to stop this team if you're an opposing coach. There are only so many things you can do.
Yeah, and Niko Medved does such a wonderful job of getting players to buy in, almost like a mini Mike Krzyzewski. Dyshawn Thomas was starting several games, I remember. Then he ended up switching to the bench and really thrived in that role, had no problem doing it. So he's looking at a team last year. They were, Kevin, the best offensive team by KenPom within the Mountain West. Number 1 in adjusted offensive efficiency, effective field goal percentage, 2-point percentage within conference play, almost 60%, and they made their free throws. Talk about Medved's offensive system, the spread, how he learned it, because it looks like this team is really taking hold of the way the game is trending, and they are just going to spread you out. They can all shoot. They can attack off the dribble, and Roddy is the centerpiece inside who can really pass as well.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me because, as you mentioned, their efficiency numbers are pretty off the charts. But what's funny, kind of doing the eye test combined with the metric test is early in the season, we had talked about the COVID pause. Their first probably 5-6 games back, offense looked pretty poor, honestly. They weren't shooting great. It just didn't look good, as, makes sense when you're coming off a COVID pause. And then they had another lull kind of late in the season where, again, they couldn't hit threes. They just didn't look good. They didn't look like themselves offensively. But all the numbers, me and Medved had some extended talks about this. He says, we're looking at everything and saying, man, we're not doing well. But then we look at our, numbers and it's like, well, we actually are. I think that just tells you the ceiling of this team of, they felt like they struggled through lots of last season and their offensive numbers were still really good. But yeah, they, just a lot of motion, they want to play at pace. I think Chandler Jacobs addition will increase that even more. And that's where Roddy comes in. I mean, he's a dude, if he's grabbing 10 rebounds, he's starting fast breaks on a bunch of those because he can go end to end, or as you say, he can kick it out to someone for a wide open three. So I expect their offensive numbers to even go up this year with some of their additions and just some of the experience. So yeah, it's one of those where Medved has really molded, some of his traditional thoughts and everything to a guy like David Roddy, who's so unique, and a point guard like Isaiah Stevens, who's so steady. So yeah, I expect the offensive numbers to just improve even.
And the offensive numbers are elite, and the biggest improvement has come on defense. In his 3 years there, Colorado State has gone from 261st overall in adjusted defensive efficiency to last year they were 72nd, and within conference play they were 4th, including, which I think is so critical, Kevin, in today's game, defending the arc. They held opponents in Mountain West play to just 31% from deep. That's first overall in the conference. Talk about their defensive changes, because defense a lot of times goes with continuity. They were solid last year, which means this year they could be even better.
Yeah, exactly. And, obviously it's a bit of a coach cliche, or completely a coach cliche, but the focus on defense first. Medved will talk till he's blue in the face about, we're going to score. The offense will come. I want us locked in defensively. And yeah, you saw the buy-in last year. I think the year before, it was a little up and down. It'd be times it'd be good, times it wouldn't be great. But last year you saw just a lot more commitment to it. And again, that's led by a guy like David Roddy. When he's putting in the effort he does defensively, and especially the guys know, I mean, they see him, 6'4" guy, how many times is he battling, Namish Keita and something like that. So if you see him doing that and still produce on offense, it's hard for you to not put in your effort defensively. They're really good at flying out at shooters, things like that. So yeah, they seem bought in. And as you say, with the continuity, I don't see a reason they shouldn't be able to continue that. You have all the same guys that did it last year, so why wouldn't they be able to do it again? And again, even a simple thing like Grant Sherfield's shot to beat them against Nevada, I think that's one that kind of sticks in their craw of like, man, get one more stop, we win a game and maybe go to the tournament. So yeah, I think they know that they're going to score. And if they're, obviously you don't need to be number one in the nation defensively or anything, but if you're in the top 3 in the Mountain West defensively, you're probably going to the NCAA tournament.
And that's certainly the focus this year. So talk about, I don't know if they've released non-conference or you have some games for us, but I would think that after coming off last year, they're my favorite in the Mountain West, but they're going to want to bolster it in the non-conference. What do they have scheduled so far as we enter, hopefully, a full arena and at least, putting most of COVID behind us this year, coming off of last year's season?
Yeah, exactly. So they haven't officially released their non-conference, but they're pretty close. They're challenging themselves. So they're in the Paradise Jam, which has some good teams in it. Colorado, Creighton are probably the big two. So that's a pretty decent opportunity right there. And then they are playing Mississippi State in a neutral site game down in Texas. They're playing Alabama on the road. Well, it's actually going to be in Birmingham, so I actually need to check on if that's going to count as neutral or road. Mm-hmm. But either way, obviously Alabama is going to be a good test. They're playing Tulsa at a neutral site in Denver, playing at Pepsi Center. That was a game that was supposed to happen last year before COVID wrecked some things. So yeah, you have a pretty solid non-conference. Oh, St. Mary's comes to Fort Collins for a
payback.
A good home
Very
game.
Good. Yes.
Yep, exactly. Yep, exactly. So it's a pretty salty looking non-conference schedule for the Rams, and certainly opportunities there to to build your net and all your various metrics and everything that you need to do. So yeah, they're, obviously it's challenging. That means you can lose some games and put yourself in a bad spot, but also means if you have a good non-conference, they'll go into Mountain West play in a great spot. And yeah, I think I'll probably have them as my Mountain West preseason favorite. It'll probably be them or Nevada, I think. But yeah, it's all set up and they're going for it. I mean, they know this is a team that it's hard to have, a better chance to make a tournament as a mid-major. And so with this roster, they're really going for it.
Kevin, I appreciate a few minutes. One more question, and then I will let you go, sir. I love to hear the schedule because to me, this is a top 25 team, no doubt about it. They're going to pull some big wins there in the non-conference. They're going to head into the Mountain West. Yeah, sure. Are they going to have to battle when a team has a strong inside player? Yes, but they did split with Utah State in the regular season last year. They did split with San Diego State with Mensa inside last year. So they have that experience and they know that's there. Give me a projection. Tell me how you think it's going to go and how you think the Rams season will end up. I'm sure it's going to be in the NCAA tournament, but I think you would agree.
Yeah, I do think there's an NCAA tournament team. Obviously, there are a lot of variables, but I think honestly, I think they'll be top 2 Mountain West regular season. I can see Nevada being really tough. Boise will be interesting. Honestly, the whole Mountain West is pretty fascinating. It's been a kind of a crazy offseason in the league. But I think they'll be right in there for a mix. I think similar to last season, I think they'll go into the final week with a chance for a title. But I think the non-conference schedule will be good enough, and I think they'll get some wins there that they should be a tournament team. And that's where they need to be. Honestly, last year, was considered a big success. But I think if you're playing in the NIT semifinals in March, this team will be really disappointed.
Yeah, and I remember a few years ago there was some national criticism about the Mountain West. They were getting one team in. They were losing in the first round. Not the case anymore for sure. And we're looking for Colorado State this year to not only win, but to make some noise come March. Folks, Kevin Lytle, reporter for the Coloradoan, covers Colorado State basketball and football. Just a great guy. Has joined us here multiple times on the podcast. Follow him on Twitter at Kevin_Lytle, Lytle. Kevin, great talking to you. I would love to catch up during the season as our train continues, previewing all the teams. This was an essential stop. I might even stay over and have a beverage here with Colorado State and Fort Collins before I leave because I love this team. Thanks so much for joining us here for a few minutes.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Happy to do it anytime.